January. So, but if you would join me for a pledge of allegiance, we have a flag in the back. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So first thing before we do nominations, we'd like to welcome Megan Fuller, who's our new representative from District 2. So welcome, Megan.
Thank you.
So at this time, the first thing we do is look at electing and nominating a chairperson. So at this point, I just open it up for nominations for chairperson.
I nominate Tim Hawkins.
One nomination for Tim. Any other nominations for chairperson? No other nominations? All those in favor of Tim serving as chair? All those opposed? All right. Tim, will you accept?
Sure.
Okay. So I'll pass it on to you for vice chair.
Okay. We'll move on to item 4.0. Are there nominations for a vice chair? I'd like to nominate Steve August. Second by Bill. Any other further nominations? Okay. We have a nomination on the floor right now for Steve August. All those in favor of the nomination, raise your hand. None opposed? Welcome back, Steve.
Thank you.
Next item would be 5.0, recognition and comments from the chair. This being not necessarily knowing who the chair was going to be, I didn't prepare anything. So, and in light of the weather that's coming, I think we'll move on to item 6.0. Approve and amend minutes of December 15th and January 13th. We'll start with the minutes from the 15th. It's a motion to accept by Steve, second by Bill. Just take a moment to look those over. Any changes? Additions, adjustments? Okay. All those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. None opposed? That passes. Okay, we'll move on to the minutes from January 13th. Is there a motion to accept by Alan? Second. Second by Steve. Not a lot to these. Any changes? All those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Okay, any adjustments to the agenda for today?
No, I just have 2 retirements as an FYI. We put those kind of under the personnel item, 13.1.
Okay. So we'll make that the first item. Okay, on to item 8.0, public session. We have 2 public sessions. The first one, if anybody would like to speak, I would ask that these items pertain to anything on the agenda. If you'd like to speak at the first session, please keep your comments to 2 minutes if you could. If there's something you'd like to speak to that's not on the agenda, we do have a second public session at the end. You can speak as long as you want. Is there anyone who would like to speak for the first public session? Deborah?
No.
Okay. All right. We'll move on. No staff reports? Okay. Item 10.0, committee reports. We have one committee report. Steve, Finance Committee report.
We met January 8th. The meeting primarily was to meet with the auditor, who they've completed the audit of the district. And, there was one deficiency noted, which has been, I think, a long-standing deficiency noted, unfortunately, which deals primarily with internal controls. We are at once very pleased and grateful to have Deborah do the books, but she's the only one doing the books, and that is just a concern that the auditor continues to raise. But other than that, it was a very clean audit. The auditor was very pleased, and I think we should be as well. I think, again, I've said this before, but I think we under appreciate sometimes the work that Deb does, and Ruth before her, in keeping this district clean. And we're very fortunate that we have that kind of skill in our administration. So, thanks, staff, for that. The only other thing I wanted to note, I think most of you, I assume everyone's on the blast emails that we get from Maine School Management Association. And there was one that came out today on their analysis of the governor's budget. And I encourage everyone to take a look at that. Even though there's some additional money that the governor has proposed, it does not keep up with the rate of inflation. So districts, once again, are falling behind below that state mandated level of support. And the burden falls on local taxpayers to make that up. So that's about it.
All right, thank you, Steve. Any questions for Steve on what happened at Finance Committee? Nope. All right, and again, I'd just like to say, thank you to Deborah for the work that she does in central office. Just for clarification's sake, that concern that came up from the auditor, as Steve said, has been an ongoing concern. It was a concern when Ruth was here, and it's just a situation of we don't have enough checks and balances within central office. And that's purely a function of staffing. It has really nothing to do with who's working in those positions. We don't have enough positions to kind of double check the work that's going on. All right, item 11.0, superintendent's report. Patrick?
Yeah, just to give you an update on state of the schools presentation. I think all of you board members have gotten an email, but we're going to shoot for February 26th and make that our next board meeting. And the real reason behind it, I think that's a Thursday. It'll be at 6 o'clock at BMS, and we'll make sure we get that out to everybody in the district. But it was scheduled to be on the 23rd, and just with people getting back from break, we just didn't feel like that Monday was the greatest time to be able to do that. And again, our meetings, I know it's been a little confusing, but our meetings going forward will primarily be at BMS. I know the thought was to have it here, but there was a scheduling conflict with another group that was in this building. So, January professional development, just wanted to let you know that full day that are pretty much our elementary and middle school focused on Lucy Calkins writing, setting writing goals and the writing process. High school focused on proficiency-based education. And some of our schools also took part of the day to examine student growth through the NWEA testing as well as other testing that we use. Staff at VRCTC each staff person went to another vocational center in the state of Maine and visited and spent a day shadowing a teacher that teaches the same discipline that they do, that is found very rewarding by our teachers there. We have two people, I think, here in the audience that are on our PEPG committee, basically, which is our new evaluation model. And they spent a day last Friday, continuing that work. And they're making good progress. I think we've come close to selecting a model that we will use, or standards that we will use. And it's just work that Judy and the committee and Joanne, who's here, continue to work on that. And we hope by June 1st to have a model and a process for you to approve, hopefully. Community engagement, I think you read the principal's reports and you see some of that, but I just think it's good to remind you that we have a lot of our students going out into the community. One example, I'll just pick on Fisher Mitchell, is that we had students go to the moorings in Bath and before Christmas and provide cards, but also simply just visiting with folks there. And then on the flip side, Ross and I met with naval officers from the Zumwalt, and they would like to come in and be a consistent volunteer at Fisher Mitchell with our students, mentoring and doing a lot of different things for them. So those are just two examples, but that community engagement is important for our schools and our principals. Just an update, geography Bs, some have already been held, other ones will be held through the month of January, and we'll make sure that you get an update on those. BRCTC, I asked Joel back in the fall, I don't remember it, but he told me I asked him, to create a much better marketing video for BRCTC. I mean, it's one of our main jobs is to get more students into those programs hands-on, very valuable, but for whatever reason, sometimes students choose not to enter one of those programs. And so I will send that to you tomorrow or Wednesday, and it is just a remarkable video, and I think it may have been done by a former student of ours, and it's really well done, and it's the students on there talking as well as our staff talking, and I think it's something that at other various schools or as a district, when we talk about communication plan, it really was, again, very well done. Just an update, a member of our boys basketball team, Ethan Winglass, you may have seen maybe right before Christmas, he was noted in the Portland Press Herald as a player to watch because of his individual performance. But we also have some very competitive teams this winter, and over the next month, a lot of them will be in competitions and hopefully championships. Board walkthroughs, just a reminder that we have those on February 3rd and February 10th. Some of you have signed up already, and for the public, it's really an opportunity for our board members to come into our schools, do a tour with our principals during the day, so that they can really get a better understanding of what goes on day to day in all of our schools.
Excuse me, I thought it was the 3rd and the 9th.
Monday is the 9th, right?
Okay, 3rd and the 9th.
Third and the
Okay. And
I just want you to know I was paying attention.
Okay. And last thing I'll just mention is that just a quick construction update or building project is that right now we do have LaValle Brenzinger, who is our architectural firm. They are doing a facility analysis of Morse, and FST, which is another company, is doing the site analysis of the current site at Morse. In addition, soon, I will bring another contract to you from the state that talks about new site analysis. And so it will be a process that will work together, where we'll have the old site, well, the current site and the current building being analyzed. At the same time, LaValle Brenzinger will start looking for parcels of land that would meet our needs at the same time. And then eventually, when we have public forums, community forums, all those options, let it be renovated on the current site, build new on the current site, or build new on a new site, all of that data will be shared so that people can have that discussion about all those options before we move forward, as a district and as a state of, the Department of Education and BGS. So it is moving fast. I'll try to give you updates as much as I can. It does not mean that we're committing to renovating, or does not mean that we're committing to purchase land and build new. It's just a process that has to work simultaneously. So we have a building committee, our 9-member building committee, meeting this Thursday. I think it's at 1 o'clock or noon. And we'll give an update to that building committee that kind of is the overseer of this process. And just to assure the public that when we get to a point of different committees that we need, regardless of what direction we go in, there'll be plenty of opportunity through our website, through Mr. Pinkerton at the high school, anybody that wants to get involved, anything from the ed specs, the design of a new building, what's important, that visioning process. We welcome anybody to be on committees or just come out to the public meetings.
Would you mind emailing the entire board as to when that building committee, what time it is?
Yep. I think it's
It is 1 o'clock.
It's 1 o'clock on the,
Is it?
1 o'clock on the 29th.
Okay.
Yeah, at central office, and I think it might be next door here. And that'll be a 9-member building committee, and we're just fortunate that Ron Lamar, the head person from LaValle Brenzinger, he's coming up to meet with me at noon. I asked him to come to that meeting at 1, and so he will walk through the process with everybody that's there. So yeah, anybody that would like to come is welcome to come.
And then, would you mind, just for people who might see this on TV, talking a little bit about what will be going on at the February meeting, at the February board meeting?
The state of the schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really an opportunity for us to showcase what's going on in the district, let it be the positives that we have going on in the district, and also talking about some of the challenges that we have as a system. And this year, usually we do a PowerPoint, and we'll continue to do a PowerPoint. But this year, we'd like to make it a little bit different. When we have some students, we have some staff members, maybe even some parents, come in and just briefly do sometimes, a presentation or just speak about some of the positive things, or positive impact that our system has had on them. And so, again, we may reach out and have the culinary arts program at VRCTC provide a dinner for anybody, people that can come. And we also might be able to provide childcare through our high school students as well. So I know that we're going to do all we can in the next month to get the word out, to have parents there. It's a great opportunity to learn more about the district and answer questions. And for board members, it's a great way for anybody, as we begin the budget process, to get a better understanding of what we're doing well and then needs that we have as a system.
Okay, any questions for Patrick? And again, Megan, being new, that State of the District board meeting, the format is very different than this. It really is kind of a snapshot of what's going on in the district. Administrators will present all the way from pre-K up to high school. So we get as Patrick said, a better sort of comprehensive picture of what's happening district-wide. Item 11.2, financial report. Turn that over to Deborah.
The financial report this month covers through the end of December. And year-to-date, we have spent 38.6% and brought in 52% in revenue. Compared to last year we had spent 41% at this point in time, so it's pretty close. The majority of the expenses, of course, are salary and benefits, and I did do another type of analysis, although I didn't put it in your packet this time, and I will next time, but I was working on it throughout the time between when it was all mailed out, but it basically breaks down salary, benefits, purchase services, supplies, and other expenses. So it's just a different way of looking at the expenses and how they've been spent to date. And basically, that shows that 65% of what we have spent is on salary and benefits, which is the majority of things. Audit all came through, as you heard, and thank you for your comments. I do want to thank Vita Ferris this year, because she has really stepped up to the plate helping me in finance. She's doing accounts payable and pumping out lots of invoices and getting things paid, so things are going well in the department. I have copies of the audit if anybody wants a copy that hasn't received one yet. Questions?
Any questions for Deborah? Okay, thank you. All right, item 11.3, fundraising requests. You got a list of fundraising requests in your packet. Patrick, I'll turn this over to you.
Yeah, it's really just an FYI for you, because we try to give you all of them in August, September, but obviously, things crop up at times, and so these are just FYI to let you know things that are either maybe just happened or that are coming up. So again, we try to be our principals and our PTAs, and we do a great job, PTOs, of realizing that it's a balance between asking for money all the time or sending kids, and we try to keep it to a minimum, but we also do have a need for it from time to time.
Any questions? Okay. I actually had one. On the BMS one, selling Red Sox tickets, how do they acquire those tickets? Where do they get the funds to purchase those tickets? And are they selling them for face value? Is there a markup? Are they donated?
Scalpel, no,
Yeah.
I don't know, I can get the answer. I think they were donated by someone and then using to help with that cause, but I'll double check that. I think so.
Okay.
I'll check.
And just while I'm asking, selling tickets for the basketball game, is that high school basketball for cheerleading? Or is that,
I'll find out.
I think that's Red Cross game,
oh, okay,
because I'm going to it.
okay. I'd just be curious to know, again, if that's the case, are the tickets donated, or is it something that they have to purchase, and where are they getting the funds to purchase that? Are they marking them up? It'd be helpful to know. Okay, any other questions on fundraising? Okay, on to old business, item 12.1, review of board goals. I don't know, Patrick, if you'd like to just speak to this a little bit as to where we are with some of these items, what we have kind of coming down the pike.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at goal one, I think that, proficiency-based, with it going out to the, promoting the understanding of that and the performance evaluation professional growth system, I think we'll come back to you in the spring, give you an overview. I mean, obviously we'll come to you in June with the PEPG, but also proficiency-based in the spring as well. Pre-K, I've talked to Rosalie. I think that we would want to wait again until May, June, just because of the assessments that we do. And we also have been making some progress with not just the assessments that you heard about last year, but another option that we're using this year as well. Goal 2, I think you're aware of what we've been doing with Goal 2. I think that this is the communication form, sorry, that we may be 1 month away from really being able to share a plan, a specific plan with you. And so we'll be able to see what you should expect from us as a district and also board members, what we need you for as well in that piece. So that could come as early as next month. I think we're going to have one more meeting. Michelle's here as well as part of that committee. And I think we're going to have one more meeting, and then by the end of February, I'm hoping that we would have concrete steps that we would take for you to be able to weigh in on as well. 3, I think we've got Dave working on the short and long-term goals of our elementary schools, and then obviously trying to keep you up to date on the Morse project. So I think that covers most of Goal 3. Goal 4, I talked with Ellen not too long ago, and she's going to try to have Walter Beasley come down, who's the state person for food service, kind of like we did last year with special ed, when we had Jan Breton come down. So what I do need from you guys is if you, around that food service, it says develop a comprehensive understanding, but if you'd like me to focus on, or have Ellen and Walter focus on specific things within food service, I just would like to know that maybe a month or two in advance, and I'll reach out to you by email and you can do that. And then assessment of new programs for 2015, usually we do that in May and June as well.
And you had indicated in the last meeting, going back to the facilities goal of Goal 3, that when did you say that Dave will be presenting to the board on the status of the bond and where we are with that?
Yeah, we had one last purchase of another item in our science lab upgrades. So we I think we just got the invoice from that today, actually, and that's our last one. So we should, next board meeting, be able to come back to you with I'll send you a spreadsheet that will show you exactly all I think it was 30 projects roughly that we did, what the estimated cost was, what the cost came in at. And there were a couple, like I think it was BMS's roof, where it came in probably maybe $15,000 to $18,000 more, just because there was more structural damage there once they got the roof off. But there's other ones where we're coming in, 20 to 30,000 under, because we were able to save money in certain areas. So I'll show you the line by line and then the total as well. And actually, Deb and I were just talking today that we're probably going to reach out to Dick Rannigan, our financial advisor, and or is this a good time to be going out? Because right now, if it's a ban, and then at what point do we want to go out to bond? What makes the most sense? So we'll be talking to him soon about that too.
But the board will be able to give input on what the total amount is that we want to go out to bond for.
Yes, I mean, you'll see how much we've spent, and again, it's around the 2.9, maybe 3 million out of that 5.2 is what we spent on those designated projects that we said we would spend on. So, yeah, but I'll give that to you before we make any decision.
Okay.
Facilities should be getting back in gear this month on the 10th. And part of our exercise will be asking Dave to move forward with a plan, the 10-year plan, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
And all of that information will also surface at the facilities committee.
Okay. All right, anyone have any questions on where we stand with the goals? No? Any comments? I think our communication person has been a good choice. I'm excited to see what they'll be presenting. Okay, so we'll go on to some second readings of policy. We'll begin with item 12.2, second reading of policy EGAD-R, copyright compliance, administrative procedure. This is an action item.
I move to adopt.
Steve moves to adopt as written.
Second?
Second by Bill. Any questions on this one? I just had one question, not necessarily affecting the policy, but just wanted to understand better what distance learning is. How do we define distance learning? It's mentioned a couple of times in here, and I wasn't familiar with that term.
I mean, I wasn't at the last policy meeting, but distance learning to me means, taking the class online.
Because it says,
Where part did you see that?
in the second paragraph, instructional staff teaching distance learning or online courses must comply with section 3 in addition to all other parts. And then under G, under general rules, it says distance learning, all rights in works created by school employees in the course of teaching distance learning courses are owned by the school unit. And I just wasn't sure what distance learning was or what distinguished it from online.
I'm not aware of what's going on in Maine, and my other experience back in New York, our school district had an individual had a very particular field of expertise. I think it was in history, and we arranged a collaborative program with other school districts in the area to transmit some of his lectures to those other school districts.
And there are programs that we don't have it here in our district right now, but we have programs where, a teacher may do just what Steve's saying, and in exchange, sometimes you get seats for another class for our own kids. So I know it says or online courses, but they're very similar.
Okay, I was just curious. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to adopt as written. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. None opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, item 12.3, second reading of policy IA, instructional goals and objectives. Is there a motion on this?
Move acceptance.
Move to accept by Alan.
I second that.
Second by Steve. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to accept, raise your hand. All right, that one passes unanimously. Okay, on to item 12.4, second reading of policy ID, school day.
I think on this one, I just, called up the main school management because I think the question came up last meeting, whether we needed to have the hours. Sometimes we do get these policies that just come from them and we think that we have to do, or the policy committee feel that they have to do it verbatim. But when I pushed them on it, I really think this is their, what they said to me the other day was that last sentence of the first paragraph is the intent, should be there, and keep the second paragraph, make that all one paragraph. But then we don't need to get down into the actual instructional hours, because it really is a local decision that we would make if we want to change those. I'm not sure, my point is, what good does that do? I mean, it's great that all of our schools, K-12, K-12, have roughly the same amount of hours and minutes in a day. But it's really, I don't feel like it's necessary, and neither did they push them on it. So I don't know if you want to take it back to policy and just kind of clean that up, if you would bring it back to you.
We can do that?
Would you like to make the motion to table?
Yes. I make a motion to table.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to table this policy. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to table? Okay, that passes. So we'll take it up at next meeting or maybe the following meeting. All right, item 12.5, second reading of policy IHBV, programs for gifted students.
I move to adopt.
Motion to adopt by Steve,
Second.
second by Bill. Any questions, comments? No further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. None opposed? That passes. Item 12.6, second reading of policy IHBEA, program for limited English proficient students, LAU plan. Is there a motion on this? Move to adopt
I
by
just have
Steve.
a quick question.
Sure.
What does LAU stand for?
That's my question. But you have to get a second first.
Would you like to second?
Sure.
Okay,
Now you can.
Okay.
so there's a second by Megan. All right, any questions, further discussion?
Yes, what
Oh.
does LAU stand for?
Didn't we have this conversation? Was it that policy or was that, it was, wasn't it? I mean, Judy can probably Google it before we get done.
I am right
but
now.
I think it was based on a, I wanted to say.
No, I think I've Googled it, I
I think it was based on a case, but in the past, but I'm not sure.
So it's not an acronym?
No, I don't believe so, but as we're sitting here going over this and trying to recall.
Because I had the same
All right.
It's a
I mean,
good
it's
question.
really.
Well, I was reading it, I'm like, I
Limited
can't
English
find
proficiency.
this anywhere where.
Not to prolong discussion, but how much of a problem is this in our
It is a
system?
case.
Not a problem,
It's
but
a-
issue to be dealt with, how many students?
Yeah, it is, so it is based on a case, I don't know if we can be more. specific
Blau
than that, but-
versus Nicholas.
Yeah.
It's an equal access plan that protects English learners. The plan describes what a school administrative unit will do to identify the ELs and et cetera, et cetera.
So all plans, specifically are all FLAU plans, but it's really linked to limited English proficient. We have a staff person, 40% in our district. I'm not sure how many students are on our caseload. I mean, Judy works with it more closely than I do, but I wouldn't say, obviously, it's not it's not, we don't have the amount of students that, say, obviously, Lewiston or Portland does. But we, again, we do have some, and we have to assess them using the access test, and so.
Probably a dozen-ish, but it comes and goes.
I coach in the system where there's 75%.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm sure.
Wow. Okay, any other questions on this? All right, there is a motion on the floor to adopt. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay. None opposed, that passes. Okay, Okay, then we have two job descriptions. Item 12.7, this is second reading of Adult Education Director job description. This is an action item. Is there a motion? Move to approve by Bill,
Second.
second by Steve. Any questions, comments on this one? All right, all those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. Okay, none opposed, that passes. Okay, on to 12.8, second reading of Adult Education Secretary job description. Is there a motion on this policy?
I'll move acceptance.
Okay, move to approve by Alan,
Second.
second by Jen. Any questions, comments on this one? All right, all those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. Okay, that passes. Okay, on to new business, item 13.1, personnel item, reports. We'll begin with retirements. We have two. Patrick?
Yeah, we have two administrators who have announced their retirements, and both have the last name Brown. And unfortunately, Sharon Brown is our Director of Special Education. She's been with us for 12 years, previously in school year 47. And so that will be a big loss for us. She's great to work with, and she's been contemplating this for a while, and I wish her the best in retirement. And the other one is Sally Brown, principal at Dyke Newell, who's been in the district, as far as I can see, close to 30 years as a teacher, and then 8 years as an administrator, some in Pittsburgh, and then most recently at Dyke Newell. So we will miss both of them, and Judy and I will be, leading the searches on those. We'll meet with the staff at those, we have three openings. We have BMS, we have Dyke Newell, and then we have special education director as far as administrators go. So we'll meet with the staff, get their input, we'll put together committees. Thank you for those of you that are already volunteered to be on that. And then we also will include parents, especially in the principal ones as well. So I'd like to wish them both well, and they've been a great service to our district.
And I'd just like to say that I take both of their retirements personally. For those of you who were not in attendance at the last administrators meeting, I made the comment of saying I was sad that Bud Solabello was leaving and that we would have no further retirements, at least while I was on this board. And next thing that happened, these two folks left, so.
Before the meeting was over.
Pretty much. So, thanks, Sally. Thanks, Sharon.
Yeah.
Good luck. Okay, resignations, we have one.
Yeah, I mean, this is uncommon that you have a teacher leave during the school year, but Jen Bevins, who is a wonderful teacher for us, grade 5 at Woolwich, her husband had an opportunity, business opportunity, that the family felt that they couldn't pass up. And, she's very professional and felt like she may be here for the remainder of the year, but then her house went on the market, and it was within 2 days, it was under contract, so to speak. So her last day with us will be February 13th, right before vacation. And Jason is already, we posted for a long-term sub, which we are confident that we'll have a fully certified teacher in there for the remainder of the year in that classroom. So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Can you talk to the board a little bit about how that process works? I mean, certainly, I don't know how many students are in that class, but how are the parents informed? What is the process that we go through to, convey to them that we're not going to miss a beat, that there'll be continuity here?
Yeah, I mean, first thing was Jen sent a letter home to the parents. Jason's followed up as well. And then Mary Moran, who's, we have 2 5th grades there. And so part of the strategy might be, they've already talked about this, that the students may have Mary for certain subjects, and then, have the long-term sub. But as you know, this year at Pittsburgh, and we've had one similar situation, and I think it's worked out great according to Sandra. So I know it's hard for families. I know I'm a parent, and it's hard if your teacher, has to leave before the school year is out. But I think we've done a decent job so far of trying to assure parents, and then we have had the advertisement out there already. And again, we fully expect to get a quality certified teacher to be in there for the remainder of this year, and then chances are we would open it back up at the end of the year for future years.
Okay. Any questions? Jen?
Is it required to have a certified teacher for long-term subs? Do we have a policy for that?
It's not required if we can, but at the same time, we're, hopeful. I mean, we find somebody with a, I can see somebody coming along with a conditional, and they may need to take a class or two.
Right.
And that would be, but again, we owe it to our students to find someone that's been through that process and of high quality.
It would be nice just to hear back from Jason, something in writing to the board, just that assures us that the process went well, or that, if there are any issues, we'd just like to be aware of. Okay, and then Schedule B appointments. I'm sorry, any other questions from the board on the grade 5 situation at Woolwich? Okay. Schedule B appointments, this is just informational?
Yeah, just informational. It's much like the fundraising, because sometimes, again, we try to provide you with a list in the fall, but then some positions are open, so this is just an FYI. And these sports, or activities typically are already in progress right now.
Are some of these changes?
Yeah, from last year, because the position may open, somebody may not be interested anymore, so then
Okay.
Scott or the building principals, and when you see some of these, like the wrestling coaches at the high school, that's, again, we haven't done anything to Schedule B, it's one stipend, and those two coaches are sharing the stipend.
Okay. Okay, on to item 13.2, reapportionment of the RSU1 Board of Directors. This is a discussion for the board. This is in light of the vote for West Bath. It's a requirement that we do a reapportionment, and so this is where the discussion begins. I'll turn this over to Patrick.
Thanks. So, in theory, in reality, by July 1 of 2015, that we should have reapportioned the board of directors. My understanding at this point is that we would express that intent to do that, and then we would communicate with the Department of Education, State Board, and the Commissioner. And then we would be required to put together a committee that would look at this. And the reapportionment committee must consist of one municipal officer, one citizen of each municipality appointed by the municipal officers, and one RSU director from each municipality chosen by the board of directors of RSU 1. So they would go to work on this and determine what they feel is best moving forward. And by majority vote, it would come out of that committee, and then it would go up to the commissioner. And I think the commissioner may have 7 days to approve that reapportionment plan, so to speak. So my understanding at this point is that number of directors could be decreased, but you have to have a rationale for it. So obviously, the circumstances that we're in, I think our attorneys feel like they would certainly understand if we went from 7 to 6. At the same time, I know there's been some discussion in the past amongst the board, and I'm not trying to persuade you one way or the other, that even having 7 board members, that, there's been some conversation about would it be beneficial to have, 1 more or 2 more because of the community work, and just some people feeling that might be worth having a conversation about. So, in essence, there's a way of, looking at it from what the majority of school districts do in the state of Maine is you represent the town in which you live in. And then a weighted vote is maybe assigned to that as well. And again, that is something for the board to consider as we start to have this conversation. Just, I mean, really, that's, tonight, we just thought it would be worth to have the conversation about, I mean, at-large members could be another topic of conversation. But I do think that we did talk with our attorneys about the fact that we had three or four of you that were just recently reelected. And our attorneys feel, strongly that, whatever way we work this out, that those members, should stay on board, especially during a transition period of, having one less town in the district anyway. So it is a process, I mean, along with, the building committee, along with budget, along with everything else that we have going on in the system, this is something that, we need to address, and you be involved to whatever degree, but also people from the municipalities. And I think we have heard from some of our towns about the way that we're currently constructed, representing two towns, and for most of you, that some people like that, and some people would prefer that not continue. So again, but it really needs to start with the board of what you think is in the best interest of moving forward.
Right, and I'll add to that. Ultimately, this will be a discussion that will be held with municipal officials. There will probably be some kind of a hearing at the public level. And as Patrick said, this will also go before the Department of Education. But I think it's important that the discussion begin at the board level, that you folks have the first say as to what direction you want to go in, how you would like this to look, so that at least we can have one or two recommendations that we then go out to the public. I think from what we have heard in the past and what my experience has been, there have been three pressing issues with regard to the configuration of the board, regardless of whether West Bath remained part or didn't remain part. The first issue, which has been brought to our attention, is municipal representation. Some folks, as Patrick alluded to, feel strongly that someone who's holding a seat should represent one municipality. There are other folks who feel that by blurring those lines, there are some advantages to that. You're representing more the interest of children and less the interest of community. The second issue is, which to some degree is a function of the first, is we have had a lack of people running for this board. I was talking to Bill about that earlier, and I think that part of that may be a sign of the times, but part of that could be a function of people don't really understand what district they're in, and it's an impediment to people running. Now, whether that were to change or not, if were we to change that, we would find out, but it's something we need to discuss. And then the third thing that has come up, again, which Patrick alluded to, is it's been my experience, having served on this board since the formation, that on one hand, we can be very functional as a 7-member board, but where we struggle is getting participation on subcommittees, on committees, and we also run into a situation when there's turnover, until new members come up to speed, you have existing members sort of carrying the load, and that usually takes, about a year for that to happen. And so there has been some discussion about the benefit of possibly having more members on this board. So those are the three issues that I see. Again, municipal representation, yes or no, lack of running, which may be tied to the districting, and what is the total number of people that we should have on this board. So I open the floor up, and I'd like this to be a lively discussion, because I don't know when we're going to have the chance to talk about this again before it goes out to the municipalities or goes to the local officials. There is one last thing that I would say. We do have the ability to form a board in any number of different ways. We're not limited to just one way or another, and I could go through those four methods if you want to hear. The fourth being basically, there are three specific ways, and then the fourth is however you want to do it. And the state sort of lays that out. But I think let's first begin the discussion with, what have been the strengths, what have been the weaknesses, where do you see this thing going, what are your personal preferences? Jen?
I think the one municipality, one representative is easier for people to understand. It does create clarity, and that's not to speak to how the situation is at what it is right now. It does not work. I think people in my town depended very much on having both people representing them, and have relied a lot on your wisdom and your leadership. They do tell me I'm not sure who I'm supposed to talk to sometimes, or do I, is this a town issue, is it an RSU issue? So having two people, I think it helps people understand that it's not just, we don't exist in just one school, one town. We exist in a bigger body, which I think helps. I do think, though, people have come to me, the majority of them have come to me and said, it just would be easier for me if there was one person, and I would know who that is. And it would be easier to know that that person is, most of the people who have voted for that person represents. I would have to say I would support the one municipality, one representative. I would be curious to see is, could we have somebody sit on the board who would be able to participate in a limited capacity? So could they work on policy issues? Could they have a vote on certain things but not other things? Could they have limited voting participation, which would allow us to have more board members for a wider experience, but not subject them maybe to every board meeting or keep the number of voting requirements kind of small? Is that possible, a person that would have a...
I suspect, and again, just from my reading of the law, that we could do something like that, but I think that my first reaction to that is it would be really confusing.
Okay, yeah. I was trying to figure a way to be inclusive, to allow people to be involved,
Right.
but not commit them to have to be, to help with some of the policy work and some of the lifting. So.
Isn't the gorilla in the room kind of proportional representation? That's an issue that's been surfaced with me, that folks from the city of Bath at city council meetings, during the difficulty that we had, it surfaced that, we outnumber them all. And yet, we only have, they have a lot of votes, but I have a little of North Bath, and she has a little bit of North Bath. I mean, they don't feel as though they're enfranchised on the board. And I think that's one of the major issues. All of us from the smaller communities can agree that we want the best representation possible one person, one person, one town, if that's the way it works out. But I don't think Bath is gonna go for one person city.
No.
I see, that's the key. I mean, they pay the most money, they have the most students. Our flagship facilities are located within their community. There's just so much there that it's got to be part of, if it's going to be a subcommittee, it's got to be a major part of the discussion.
Yeah, I
Is
think,
how that's factored in.
I think it's a good point. I think if we went to a proportional structure, if we went to a structure where we were looking at an individual represents a municipality, then Bath would have to represent 50% of this table. It wouldn't be, whether it was through a proportional vote or whether it was through pure numbers.
Representation.
Yeah, so either, if you're representing, if we change the structure so that you represent a municipality, either if it was one person per municipality, then the person who was representing Bath would have 50% or over 50% weighted vote, or you would have multiple people at the table from Bath versus one individual from the other municipalities.
Or more. I mean, I don't know the various populations.
Yeah, and that's,
which
you know,
would
be based on
entitled to a
numbers.
cover. Depends where you drew the line.
And again, just to give a little historical perspective, I sat in on the meetings when there was the formation of the RSU, and one of the concerns was
Yeah.
the smaller municipalities said, we don't want to lose our voice, we don't want to come to the table and
It's obvious.
have, you know, be outvoted by Bath. But they in fact hold the majority. So the way that the districting was done was there is potential for every seat at this table to be held by a representative from Bath. And that was frankly a little bit of a concern from some of the smaller communities. It hasn't played out that way, but each one of our seats represents part of Bath.
Out of that. We're around the table and everybody's
And it
got a
could
piece.
be, but if we were to switch to where we just represented our municipality, I don't think that we could, I don't think that if it was one person representing a municipality, that Bath person would have, in a weighted vote, more than 50% say over what happens.
That would not be acceptable whatsoever.
There's-
Absolutely not acceptable.
There's got to be a reasonable approach that can be taken where Bath has sufficient representation so they feel that they are in fact represented sufficiently, and where everyone else can still be a voting member and be part of the club. Make it work. And it'll be a trick, but I think it can be done. Reasonable people can come up with reasonable solutions.
Any further thoughts on the municipal representation piece?
I don't see how we can come up with a situation where the small towns are going to feel comfortable any way you cut it. They're going to feel that they're outnumbered. My feeling is that, and this is a personal feeling, I don't represent a town. I represent kids in the best interests of them. I don't care where they come from. And this goes back to my days of teaching. I didn't look into their background and say, well, you come from Pittsburgh, or you come from West Bath. I didn't care where they came from. They came there, and I was to try to give them the best education I could. And that's what I'm trying to do here. I don't care where they come from, what town they come from. As far as representing somebody, when I was running for office, I went down to Rouseck. I didn't know anybody down there. Who are you? Nobody's ever come see us before. I felt if I was going to be representing the town, that I ought to know something about it. My first priority is the kids, not the towns.
My 3 years of experience here, and those are the people that I have worked with on this board of directors. Alan is representing the attitude that this board of directors has had. Our committee meetings and our board meetings, we've talked about the best interest of the system, what the system can afford, what the system needs to implement. I can't remember talking about an individual community. It's always been the weaknesses that we had, and the deficiencies we had in student services and how we could address them, and the weaknesses that we had in facilities and how we could address them. But that was for everybody. And that's my experience on the board, with Chet Garrison, with Dave Potter, and with the folks sitting around the table here tonight. I never thought that anybody that I served with was representing Bath or Pittsburgh. It just never surfaced. We always taught kids and programs for kids and facilities for kids. And it didn't matter which town it was. It was our student body in total that we discussed and we've worked to move forward. On the committee, we don't talk about that. The only time we talk about individual communities is when we get into facilities. And then we've got facilities in individual communities that need to be addressed, and we address them. But that's in the best interest of the whole system, not necessarily just the kids in Bath or Pittsburgh or West Bath for that matter. I think it can be done. I think it can be done reasonably. And I look forward to moving forward with maybe a larger board, with greater representation. Maybe that makes sense. I'd want to work with municipal officials in the development of the apportionment. I think it's important that right from the start that they're on board. They understand what's occurring and they have input into what's done.
Just so you know what time frame is.
Who put me on a soapbox tonight?
90 days from the first meeting that's called with the board members and municipal people. You have 90 days that we're charged with to come up with a reapportionment plan.
Yeah. Or several.
Jen?
Maybe I'm new to this and that's why I have the perspective I have, or maybe because I have a legislative background. But when I feel that 90% of people elected me to represent them, out of all the people who voted for me, even though I worked across 2 districts, and like Alan, like I did, I went to the other part of the district that I don't live in and don't know people and walk the streets and introduce myself. Even doing that, at least 90% of the people who voted for me came from one town. And I do feel that there is an obligation to represent the constituents of which you voted for. Now, as you represent them, you are representing and making decisions about a combined municipal entity of the RSU, and you work towards those goals. But as an elected official, I believe that I serve my constituents when they say, we've elected you, the majority of people who voted for you came from this municipality. I believe I represent their voice. Now, how I look at what I do here, I believe, like you, Bill, that we work for the children and in all the decision on how to, especially financially, manage all the things that we want to do. But I would say I disagree with not being able to say that when I'm elected by a big group of people, I do need to listen to and represent all of those, the majority of those people. So, and in my circumstance, I've never heard boo from somebody outside of Woolwich. So I feel when it comes to specific items, any person who calls me as being a member of the board, I feel the responsibility to respond to and to make sure their voice is heard, as I've done across the board. I would do anyone in my district or not. But I feel that there is a responsibility towards a district that is 90% of who votes for you. And I am very, very concerned with the concept of Bath having a 50 or 51% decision-making on especially the financial situations that happen that would dramatically affect the people in the town that I come from and that I represent. So I would be very concerned with that. And I do know that when the board put the initial apportionment decision together, I know a lot of work went in that, and I understand that a little better now, Tam. And I would want to preserve that work and that equality. And so I'm not sure how it's done, but I believe keeping the municipal people involved, but I don't feel that there's any disrespect in supporting and representing the largest constituent that voted for me to representing. If they come to me with their specific interests and specific concerns in representing their voice.
Anyone else on the municipal piece?
I know you said it back in the, can't remember, the plan comes from the board or from this municipal?
From this committee that's comprised of board members and municipal officers, and I think one other person that is.
So they can make it, they can track the plan, and it's their plan that gets submitted to the committee, to the Department of Education.
Does their plan come here first?
I don't-
Go directly to.
It doesn't say that, so I'll double check on that. It doesn't say that it comes back
Got work to do.
to the board, you know, to officially okay it before it goes to the commissioner, so I'll double check on that one.
Sounds like option 4, you do anything you want to do. Why did they bother with options 1, 2, and 3?
Right. Okay, let's talk a little bit about number of members on the board and people's feelings about how this board operates as a 7-member board, and thoughts of either trying to preserve that 7, reduce it, or increase it.
Well, as much as I know, we've struggled at times to preserve the 7 in terms of finding, persuading people to come for the board. I would like to suggest we increase the numbers to 9 and do it through at-large members. I just feel we need a little, without having the comment understood to me that the board sitting in front of the board that we have isn't capable or completely qualified to make decisions regarding the RSU. I just feel that the depth and the additional numbers would help with some of the transitional things that Tim has mentioned in terms of turnover on the board and basically developing a pool of individuals who were knowledgeable about the business of the RSU and capable of taking leadership roles in the community.
Any other thoughts on that?
At-large membership, depending upon how the whole thing is structured and how they fit in, is certainly a way of doing that. And it's been effective in some cases, because if that could then end up with 70% of the membership. So there'd have to be some discussion around where the various representation came from. But again, that's a longer meeting than this one. Perhaps several longer meetings than this one.
It is, but again, you know, the way my experience has been with any process, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think this process is going to involve a lot of people, but the impetus has got to start somewhere. And I think it would be best if it started here as opposed to starting out there, because I think that while there will be, when this committee is formed, there'll be members of the public, there'll be municipal officials, and there will be board members or a board member. People have perceptions about how the board should function, but nobody knows actually how the board functions better than the people who serve on that board. So there are folks out there who have some preconceived notions about what the board should look like. I think the first recommendations should come from the folks who actually serve on that board. So again, that's, and I think that my other experience with process is very often as a process goes down the road, you ask the question, when do I get to say something? Well, board members, here's your chance to say something, because you may not get the chance later on if there's only one or two of us, or as Patrick said, if the plan goes before the Department of Education, before it comes back here.
It's not going to go until they're up with this, at least a public hearing, if not.
Right.
So we'll have plenty of opportunity to provide feedback to the committee.
Yeah, I think the public will, but I think the time for the board to just have a conversation is now.
We don't know if it has to come to us yet or not.
I don't see it in there, but I'll.
You don't see anything?
Kyle?
Yeah, obviously, the vote changes my thing, but I did think about this part because this had come up late before the vote, and I thought, what would be kind of a fair way of handling this, and I didn't think about whether or not we'd go from 7 to 9, but I thought, if we went to a representing one person per municipality, but adding the at-large, that could get us a way of balancing representation, mixing both scenarios, so that, one town definitely has a person representing them directly, and that the at-large candidates will allow, anybody to put their hat in the ring, what their town, they can, they might be able to sway, they could come from Rosick, and they could sway a bunch of people from that, so I can do this job well. It's not about where I live, but I can represent you better than anybody else, kind of make, and truly making it fair that way. I think that would probably satisfy that need for a direct representation, but also allowing, that if people want to show up and represent the town more, they could run. Say what they could do and what they could deliver for the district, regardless of what
Large folks would have to run in the entire district.
Right.
So the folks in the other communities would be participating in voting for the at-large.
Yeah, I mean, I believe, I'm a big proponent of having at-large members, because that does, to some degree, address the issue that we've had over time of not getting people to run because they don't necessarily know which district. At least with when an at-large seat becomes available, if you live in any one of the municipalities, it's up for grabs. So I think that's a real clean, easy way to potentially increase the size of the board or at least get more participation.
And on top of that, if you have someone who is running in a district, currently in, say, District 1, and there's somebody else in that district who would like to run, who could contribute, but their option is running against Jennifer, but they like the work she's doing, they have no other option.
Yep.
But having an at-large, they could come from either Woolwich or Bath and then still contribute as well.
Jennifer?
When you look at how this would work out, is there a way to put some safeguards in it so that one town like Bath would not have more than 51%? I mean, could not even, in that situation, is there a way to prevent the saying that the at-large representation could not outweigh any one municipality's more than 50% vote on the board,
I think it's highly unlikely, and I think that ironically, again, the way to accomplish that is to do what has been done. Because again, the only community that could have over 51% at this table is Bath. Bath could have 100% at this table. I mean, it exists right now. And they by rights, they represent over 50% of the student population. And they should have that option. And I think that the way that this was set up,
Yeah. Oh, I remember.
it balanced acknowledging where Bath fits in terms of the total district, and they do have the majority. It balanced that with the needs of the smaller communities wanting to have a voice. And as I said, if you look at, we've had, I don't know, 3 elections now? 4 elections, something like that. Well, I shouldn't say that because we rotate, but the way that this has played out, currently we have Bath, Woolwich, Arousick, Bath, West Bath, Bath, Phippsburg. Well, I don't know where the students are from, but they don't run in districts.
Yeah, I have that.
No, but you live in Phippsburg.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm talking about where
residents.
we are residents. So this board, at this very moment, could have 7 residents of Bath. It's structured to allow for that. And right now, we have a resident from every community in the district. And as long as I've been on the board, which has been since the beginning, that has almost been true, if not always true. So I think that while there are drawbacks to this, not understanding the district and lack of clarity, which district am I in and when do I vote, and we've had all kinds of problems at polling places, one of the biggest benefits is achieving exactly what you want.
Right,
And I, when I've heard from certain municipalities, I've wanted to say, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
That this really works out, it's very balanced, and since I don't have a sign in front of me that says Arousick, or you have a sign in front of you that says Woolwich, when we converse, we're not talking with that in the back of our mind. It's all about what, these 2 gentlemen said, it's all about what's best for the district, what's best for this facility. And maybe we're shortchanging our districts to some extent, and I know it's been brought to my attention, but frankly, I'd really like to know how.
Yeah.
Because if anybody from Woolwich ever comes to me, or anybody from Bath comes to me, as you said, I want to address those concerns.
Right.
But my focus first and foremost, and I think our obligation as board members, is really to serve the people who don't have a vote, and those are the students. If a taxpayer or a municipal official doesn't like what we do, run against us, or don't vote for us. That's my take. So back to the number of members though, Steve suggested increasing to 9. I don't know where the rest of you stand in terms of total composition of the board.
I'm sorry, I don't understand how somebody, I've got to go back, I'm just trying to do the calculations. The way this proportional representation is set up right now, there's no way for my district, well, there's very limited opportunity for my district, for someone in Bath to win this seat, because there are proportionally so more fewer votes that come into this seat from Bath.
No. When the state did the districting, based on population, there should be a proportional amount of residents from Woolwich and Bath in your district.
Wow, then a very tiny proportion of Bath people voted then for this seat.
That's true.
So I guess that's probably what my impression is that from any of you who come from the town, live in the town, that you partially represent, I'm guessing 90% of the people who bother to vote for this, or over 50% probably come from the town where you reside.
Not in my case.
50% of the people that vote for you come from Woolwich.
I'd say more than 50% of the people that voted for me lived in Bath and Woolwich than those who voted in Roslyn. I'd have to look at it.
Yeah. Huh,
But-
okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that, thank
For
you.
me, I think it was about 35% were from Bath, maybe 40% maybe from Bath, and the rest wasn't
Yeah.
as a turnout vote.
Mine was only 10%. Bath.
From Bath?
From Bath.
And you live in Pittsburgh?
Now, Steve, you live in Bath and have a district in Pittsburgh. How was the vote?
You know, I gotta tell you, I don't know. My focus wasn't on Pittsburgh or Bath, it was on running for the school board.
Yeah, just what the bottom number was, yeah, okay.
Okay, so again, I'm sorry, but I want to move on because we do have some other items on the agenda. Let's get back to number of members on the board. Kind of thoughts around the table? More, less, the same?
I think it definitely should be an odd number. And with all of the outside activities I get on committees and things, I could support having too much more people to share with.
Be helpful.
I would say.
I look at my March schedule and
Yeah. Jen, you'd say
I
the
would
same?
agree with that, yeah.
Bill?
More, but I'm much more concerned with where they come from, how they're apportioned, than I am about the number. Alan's absolutely right. You would nod your head. We could use some more help as volunteers on the various committees, because we do an awful lot of work in committee. And it would be helpful to have some more voices, but it's the apportionment that is the kicker to me. That's the thing that has to come out of committee in a logical way, so that no one's discriminated against and we don't end up with a war. We want to do something that's perfectly rational and is going to represent the kids in the best manner possible.
Kyle, what do you think?
I would say that more would be, and 9 would be a good number. And I think if you went with some at-large method would be the best way. Filling that, because you may need to hit some of the other communities to fill this in. And that would be a good idea.
Okay. All right, we've got a couple minutes left. I mean, is there anything else you'd like to add? Or did you want to?
I think not, anything bigger than 9 gets unwieldy, you know, for time and conversation. I mean, I think that 9 would probably be the max that I'd be comfortable with.
Right.
But I also, you know, would not want to sit on a board where I felt like I was completely outnumbered in my voice or my ability to work. I wouldn't be interested in running on a board where it was 75% people representing Bath. I wouldn't run again.
Or any community?
Any community, well, yeah, any community, but I wouldn't be interested in participating in that. Maybe somebody else would, but I would not feel like I could be effective in the way that the people who have come to me and asked me to do this to be effective, I wouldn't be successful at it. So I think that making it proportionately equitable and fair was part of the reason that it was agreed in the beginning, was that was very important, and that was the one of the fundamental reasons that my town came to this organization and agreed to this, was that equity in voice. I remember those conversations, I remember people coming, the people who were doing it at that time. And it's, you know, it's even changed now. Now, for the organization that we originally said we wanted to be part of is no longer there, because
Right.
West Bath isn't there. So what was the original agreement and what do you find yourself at? Is this the same thing that we said yes to? There were people in Woolwich wanted to do, you know, as it becomes something so different that we're no longer,
It's still
Dealing
there
with the
till the
same-
end of June, and by that time, we'll have a plan.
with you involved in it, I'll absolutely.
Absolutely.
Can I say one more thing, Tim, about that?
Sure.
About having not to keep it going, but, I mean, having a voice on this board is important, but the biggest decisions are already weighted in Matt's favor. Because we have a public hearing, a town meeting style vote on budget, and that can be added to and subtracted by the people who show up. So if Bath residents want to show up, they can dictate the budget. They can, in many fashions. If you want to go out for a major referendum of policy, you're going to have to go out, to the public. That's going to be outvoted by Bath. So, that already exists. A lot of major functions of the district, you have to accept that the largest population can dictate those. Financial aspect is dictated by that. It not necessarily has been, because there may not have been that many residents show up, but if they did show up, or they did go to the polls to vote, that would be the case. And that's just the reality of, the way the structures are made, and I think the idea when they wanted to blur the lines of the districts was the concept that if people are gonna vote by the town they live in, it doesn't matter if there's nobody here from Bath, still at the polls, that budget can be changed right then and there by Bath residents come, they can dictate that.
But given, in all reality, given the numbers that we've seen turn out,
Right, I know.
almost any community can impact the vote because we never get the majority of voters or even a really high percentage. So I think that, I go back to my experience within the RSU, and again, I only see it from my perspective, but I feel that every municipality has had, I feel, an equal opportunity to impact what goes on, whether it's sitting here, whether it's someone sitting, from the public, or whether it's somebody voting at, one of the hearings. I've heard about, and probably somebody could give me specific examples about the concern about, Bath versus the other communities, or the vision of Bath, how it's different. I just don't always see that. I see it, I've not really experienced that. My experience on the board has been, anyone that has sat here from Bath, I don't feel has had very much a different vision from what I've had from a Rouseck or Woolwich. I just haven't seen it. Now, maybe it exists, and there certainly have been moments at some public hearings where there have been some very vocal folks from all the communities who didn't agree with what we were doing. But I wouldn't put it just on that. So it's 7:30 now. I'm going to move off this topic. I think it's been a good discussion, and it's given us a little bit of direction, and then we'll meet and discuss about forming that committee and get back to you folks as to what the composition will be and timing and all of that. But it is a direction that we need to move in. So we'll move on to item 14.0, review board committee assignments. In your packet, you had a list of current standing committees and ad hoc committees, and who the folks are that currently serve. Are there any of these committees that somebody no longer wants to serve on? I guess I'll begin the discussion.
It makes sense for me to drop off and leave that on.
Okay?
And I need to drop off for library. I sit on their board as a trustee.
Yeah. You picked Ticked another one off. So we currently have vacancies then on the policy committee. Janet indicated that we should have a second member on that committee. And then we have total vacancy on BRCTC, dropout prevention, and patent-free library. Megan, since you are our newest member, and I don't see your name here, do any of these which of these committees appeal to your sense?
Happy Library.
There we go.
What, how often do they meet for one?
Well, we meet,
Okay, so
I'm going to say unfortunately, we meet monthly,
Okay.
and meetings are typically 4:30 in the afternoon. And they do last an hour.
Okay.
You feel good with that?
Librarian representing us on the library.
Yes,
Okay.
I think I can do that. And
And it is made up of old RSU1 so.
And could I entice you to serve on the policy committee?
Yes, I think I can do that.
Okay.
Where do you meet?
Here.
Here.
I'd be willing to pick up the RTC.
You know, I was actually going to grab that. Served on it before, I'll step back in.
It's a kind of decision there.
Yeah.
To go
Steve, you want dropout prevention? Meets annually.
Or as needed, one of the two.
Okay. Everyone else feel good with where they stand? You want it?
It's kind of my old social worker,
All right, great.
parole officer alley.
All right, then I'm going to move Steve to BRCTC. So Steve is now at BRCTC, and Bill is at dropout prevention.
Okay, thank you.
You good with that?
Yep, well, I volunteered for it. You
All right.
preempted it.
Who chairs the dropout?
The J.
Okay. So the changes, other than the two that I just mentioned, is Megan will also be serving on the policy committee and patent-free library. I want to thank all of you for your willingness to serve on these committees. I just ask that you please attend.
Well, that's not my question. Will
Please.
I get notified when
I'll
that
talk-
meeting?
I'll talk to Leslie,
Okay.
Director of the library.
Thank you.
And Julie Rice will send out everything.
Okay.
Folks haven't actually broken down the door to join the facilities committee, and I think we could utilize, if the public is watching tonight, maybe if they could contact the office, we could use one or two more members to that committee. Deb is serving on the Morse committee, and she's also got a big job here in town now, Deb. And Suzanne wanted off. So we need some citizen members of the facilities committee.
All right. I will move on to first reading of policies. These are no action items, but we've got some doozies this month. And I'm just shaking my head when I read these. We'll begin with item 15.1, JFCK and JFCKR, student use of personal electronic devices at school. Anybody want to begin a discussion on this?
There probably will be a dozen more new devices by the time we pass this. At the rate that they're being developed.
I know that, at least for me, some of my questions about JFCK were answered in JFCKR, which were, what are the consequences of violating this policy? But I had two specific questions. And the first one I'll begin with is with item F. It says student cell phones and other electronic devices may be subject to search if there is reasonable suspicion that a student is violating board policies, procedures, or school rules. School administrators may confiscate electronic devices for as long as necessary to complete their investigation. I wanted to know, are we in a position to do this legally? And is the staff on board with this policy? Because this is a big one.
Again, I wasn't at the last policy. I'll just say that I'll go back and talk with Dean Emerson, our technology director, because I'm sure that he's been to some of these conferences with Governor Wisdom recently. I'll go back and double check. But again, to me, the first gut reaction would be somebody that's has something on their phone that may be of cheating nature or of other things that some other examples of things that kids should not be doing with their phone. Between administration and the school resource officer, that's what that should be referring to. But I'll go back and check that. As far as
Yeah, I'd
staff,
just like to tighten up that language.
staff being on board, I don't think it's I think it's it's something that administration would be handling. If there's an issue.
Okay.
There's an issue of confidentiality there,
Well, I just,
potentially with some of the information. And
the fact that we would be searching a student's cell phone and confiscating a device, I just want to make sure that legally we're in a position to do that. And that we're...
And again, I think the key term there, and I think our attorneys are telling the same thing, but I'm not an expert, is that the reasonable suspicion, just like with the backpack, something in their locker.
Right.
If they're choosing to bring it to school, and there's a reason for it. It's not just a random thing that we're taking, students, cell phones and just saying that we want to look through them. There has to be a reasonable suspicion.
And
So
that's
I
what
will.
Dean said.
Yeah.
That's exactly what Dean said in terms of the locker, the backpack. And there's also a stipulation that you can only look for what you've said, what you're looking for. There's, you can't go into all the other different areas unless there's a reasonable reason to go into those different areas. So I said, because like my iPhone's got my bank information on it, which is password protected, of course, but you can't go into other places unless it's the purpose of what you're doing. And I believe that came from discussing it but it was raised.
But if the iPhone includes material or something offensive that the student downloaded on summer vacation, it happens to reside on the phone, why, what's the nexus with responsibility of the school district in that case? I mean, the implication is that certain activity that happened on school premises or during school hours could be subject to could be, there could be some responsibility of the district in that case. But if the material is uploaded, at midnight while the student is in their house, how does the district then get control over that content?
I don't think we want control over it. I think
but
reasonable suspicion would be something, and again, we would be going in there, searching it for a purpose. With the student present, typically that's what we do with, backpacks or anything else as well. If there's something else on a device, just like with a computer, again, it's a little different because we own the computer versus we don't own the phone.
Right.
However, if it's something that happened, and it could be shown to happen outside of school, and it wasn't related to what we're talking about, it would be a question whether we even address that.
Because E is written pretty inclusive.
That was my second question.
You know, it just says that if you've got something on there that violates board policy, it's prohibited. But if, I wouldn't condone that stuff going on. I'm not condoning the student's behavior here, but if the student, again, accessed it, uploaded it on summer break.
I guess if that material is pertinent to the reason that it's given for the search of the device. If whatever material is pertinent to that issue of either bullying or harassment or to the extent of what the reason is for that, then that, I believe, even like, is that there's no presumption of personal privacy if you're on this equipment, if you're on school grounds.
But it also depends on the server and where you're downloading information from and all of those things, so.
Right.
Let me go back, I'll get
Yeah,
some
I'd
more
just like to
information.
have it be
Yeah.
ironclad, because my second question was what Steve was alluding to. In E, it says, the change now says, the use of personal electronic devices that violates board policy, administrative procedure, or school rule is prohibited. And then it goes on to say, in addition, accessing, viewing, submitting, forwarding, downloading, et cetera, is prohibited. But it doesn't say accessing during school hours or accessing on school grounds. You could read it that if you're accessing, viewing, submitting during summer vacation or on the weekend or at night, you could be in violation of a board policy. What you do with your device on your own time is, we don't have any say over that. We may not condone it, but it falls outside of our.
Ground.
Right, now, if you bring it to our grounds and you've done this.
Wherever you've done it.
Right.
You brought that on school, so yeah.
Right,
Yep.
When it's not legal.
yeah.
When it's not legal.
So I'd just like to tighten that one up. And then I would want to make sure that, again, in this day and age, as prevalent as these devices are, you know, you see how many times you go to a movie theater before the movie starts. It's like 6 or 7 times they say, shut your phone off, shut your phone off, shut your phone off. People still don't do it, but I think that we need to make sure that this policy is clear both to our students and our staff and their parents, and that kind of goes to our communication piece, that they know up front what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in the district. Any other questions, comments on this one?
I just had one on D. Again, this is JFCKR. The second to last sentence of that, prior permission before posting any photos or videos of videos.
I guess that would, and then you bring that up again, to ask the student members, how often at school do students use a phone to either take pictures or take video of other students? You seen it happen?
I mean, it's not realistic to expect that permission is going to be granted before it's posted on the social media website. I don't think that you're going to have a process that's going to be super effective in that.
Verbal is fine. It's not like a permission slip or something. And so I think it went to protect someone who did not want to be posted, you know, or depending on what they were doing, they didn't give any kind of permission for that.
How are we gonna verify that permission? I mean, these are kids, so one kid said, you take it, then didn't like what you
Right.
the photo and post it and say, I didn't give you permission.
Right.
So now you're gonna, I mean, how do you, it seems to me that rule is unenforceable because you can't.
Well, you can have a policy which allows you to reference that permission piece. So when you go back to the student, if the student doesn't agree to take something down, you can say, well, we have a policy here for this, and our policy says that, you know, you need to get permission, so it's,
Then you have, but if one person said they grant me permission.
well, they can say they don't grant, you know, they no longer grant you that, so now you have to take it down, because they say you don't have my permission to have that. So I guess it's not just the posting, but it's the fact that it is posted.
Well, yeah, but say, like, me and my friend are taking a photo in the cafeteria, and there's people behind us, like, we're not gonna, like, ask them for permission too, so then it's a little wishy-washy there as well.
It is, and I think it goes to the point of when someone says, I don't want it, not so much asking everybody in advance. It was more, the discussion was, it was more speaking to if someone expresses not to be included in something that's been posted. And the policy is you need permission, then you can point to something and say, this person doesn't want to be there, we have a policy. They're telling you they don't want to be there. Now, we need to ask you to take it down.
On this, I notice when you can listen to, or you can use devices traveling, but is this covering like athletic events in certain individual sports like wrestling or swimming and stuff? Many kids will listen to the device at the event as they're preparing for that. And if maybe I missed it in here, they would no longer be allowed to do that. So if they're preparing for their match, they might want to listen to music. It's very common. It's always been common. But I might be missing it.
Where would that be prohibited?
It says you're not allowed to use it. The only place that allows you to use it between class periods and lunch periods. You may also use it traveling to school activities to the extent you're allowed, but it says any other part. During class, school activities, including studying all field trips, co-curricular, extracurricular activities. I'm assuming that includes athletic events. That would mean if you were.
Yeah, I don't think, I think C was put in there for the purpose of, you can use that, and I don't think we've ever had, there's a time when a coach may say, hey, I want to talk to you in the locker room now, so take off your headphones, but we're not trying to prohibit that.
No, in fact, it says you can use it during those.
I think what he's saying, I think what you're saying though is the part under A, where it says it's prohibited during co-curricular
Oh,
and extracurricular activities.
Yeah, that's what
I see what you're saying. Okay.
And I guess if you want Article B, I suppose the athlete could say, can I use my device to get prior permission? I suppose that would be the right way around it.
We'll go back.
Yeah, I just-
we can all be honest here and say that, this is something that, a policy we need to have. Is it ever going to be bulletproof? No way, not with smartphones, not with, we're not naive to think that, as much as we communicate to parents, as much as we communicate to students, high school students, even middle school students, that if a parent's going to text a kid at lunchtime and say, hey, plans change after school, got to do this or whatever, we expect kids to have it on silence or on vibrate mode. But, it's, in this day and age, it's a way for that communication is going to happen, and we're doing the best we can in the educational environment to keep that to a minimum. With Snapchat, I was just talking about that with somebody earlier today. Talking about the permission to get pictures. Well, can I take a picture of Isabel and within, send it to somebody and then it basically disappears, correct? So you're not going to know if that person's in that picture or not unless they take a picture of it before it goes away. So.
But I think, actually, now that you say this, a statement just like that in this policy, I think
Would be realistic.
it would help define the policy and say, in a perfect world, under realistic conditions, here's what we're trying to accomplish. We know that, I would use the words that you just said, and if you had that as an opening statement in this policy, I think it would go a long way towards validating what this is about. Because unlike other policies where it's very cut and dry and there's a reason why we have policy, this is more a recommendation than a policy. And yet, we know what we want to achieve, and we know what we're referring to, it's just we also understand the world that we live in. I think if you had a paragraph that stated what you said, it would allow for some of the ambiguity that we're bringing up, and it sort of passes a straight face test. So, let's send that one back. Okay, on to item 15.2, policy JL, RSU1 local wellness policy.
This has been replaced, right?
Just what's in red is just the updates. And the wellness committee got together, and then I think Ellen came and met with, maybe Aaron did it too, came and met with the policy committee. So you can see the changes in the red, is really what they are making, which are not, I don't think there are anything major changes. I would say on page 2, the very top of the page, again, this is a first reading, so we're not voting on this, but I had questioned, with Ellen, and just, two late start Wednesdays, during the school year would be devoted to wellness for staff. It says, I think it says support staff.
To support.
Yeah, and I read it as support staff, so I questioned that, and it was really for all of our staff. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I support that. At the same time, this is the only policy we have that really is attempting to dictate that. And, and again, I want to talk to our administrative team further about this, whether it's doable, manageable, whether it should be 1 a year. Again, which I don't think is, and for any business or organization, I don't think it's a bad focus area every once in a while. So that may, change a little bit, or, it could end up staying the same, but I think it's something we want to have further discussion about.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this one? The only thing I noticed, I think it was on the last page, I don't know, I'm not quite sure. It may also include this wellness council. I didn't know if we had a board member on this, but I guess not. Okay, we'll move on. Item 15.3, policy GCSA and GCSA-R, employee and volunteer use of computers, electronic devices, school network, and the internet. Any questions, comments on this one?
I would just go back through this and make sure that this is employee and volunteer policy for employees and volunteers, but not every time reference is made to individuals covered under this policy or volunteers included. Sometimes it just refers to employees, and sometimes volunteers and employees. I just want to make sure that there are consistent references through this.
Anybody else? There's some language that I saw that needed to be tightened up. Number 4, under no right to privacy. The second sentence reads, the school unit reserves the right to monitor all computer devices and internet activity by employees and volunteers, whether on or off school premises. I don't think we're going to be monitoring all activity of employees off premise. So you may want to rethink. I don't know if that was the intent of that language. It almost sounds like Big Brother. You know what I mean?
There are times you read this, and is the intent to only monitor the use of RSU1 computers or our own?
Does that general statement cover you under the wiretapping 1986 Act without the privacy, like making notice to all those people that they have no privacy no matter what even if you don't monitor them all, just telling them that the expectation is they could be monitored. Because I think without that, then you start violating that federal word hazard law. It doesn't give you the right, I think that's why that's in there. It's like it just says you may do it, not that you will do it, but you have the right to do it.
And it's not just school-owned equipment.
No, it isn't.
It's the equipment you bring onto the school premises.
Because you can use a network.
Yeah.
You can
Right, but I don't know if it's clear when it says whether on or off school premises. So I have my own private computer, and I'm at my house, or I'm not on our server.
Or your phone.
It's just
and
the
Oh,
wording
okay.
isn't.
Yeah, the wording,
So your question is your own computer on your own network,
Well,
in your house?
Yeah, because it says whether on or off. So,
Yeah.
I think I know what the intent is, but I
Yeah,
don't know that.
okay.
the way that it reads is if you're an employee of the district has the right to monitor you on your personal equipment when you're off premise, and that's, I don't think
Not-
that's what they mean.
Okay. Gotcha.
On page 3, item F and item 9 seem to be the same to me. Check the wording there. F says, any communications that represent an employee's views as those of the school unit or that could be misinterpreted as such. And then 9 says, any communication that represents personal views as those of the school unit or that could be misinterpreted as such. I think one of those needs to go. And then, under J, additional rules for use of privately owned computers / devices by employees. Number 1, an employee who wishes to use a privately owned computer in school must complete an employee request to use privately owned computer device form. Does that also apply when we're talking about devices to smartphones? Does that fall under the category of device? And again, I think that's one of those little we need to look into that. Anyone else? My last thing is, just throughout this, in some instances, it refers building administrator. In some instances, it refers technical coordinator or technical director. Just like to know why in some instances it's one over the other, and then in other instances it's the other over one. And then in some instances it's both. Okay, it is 8 o'clock. Is there a motion to continue the meeting past 8? Moved by Steve, second by Alan. Any discussion? All those in favor of extending the meeting past 8 o'clock, raise your hand. And none opposed? We are extending the meeting past 8. Item 16.0, public comment. 17, set next meeting date and location. We talked about scheduling this for February 26th, correct? At BMS. Does that work for everyone? And that will be the State of the District meeting. All right, item 18.0. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Bill, second by Steve. Any further discussion? All those in favor? We are adjourned.